have more than I did. And you gotta understand, I was a nothing, a no deer. I was never gonna pull Santa's sleigh. I have a bad back. And I'm not a strong flyer. And I smoke. I was an unemployed herd deer. In fact, I had been fired from my last job. And once word gets around that you can't handle herd work, you're through. So when the vets came to me and told me that my son was going to be born like he was, that Rudolph would probably never walk without crutches, that he would be horribly disfigured with a face no doe would ever love, he would have the mind of a child all of his life. And when they told me that my mate and I shouldn't try to have another, because our children would all be like that, Corey was terribly upset. That was the end for me. That was the end of my life. You see, every parent has dreams for their child. Dreams that won't ever come true. That their son will grow up and be the President of the United States. That their daughter will maybe grow up and be the President's wife. Crazy outlandish dreams. And sometimes when your life is where mine was, the only thing that can make you go on is that dream. And the hope that your kids will be better off than you are. That crazy parental optimism is what keeps you going through the bad times. When it's a struggle just to put food on the table. But you know that even if you never amount to anything, at least your offspring would have a world of possibilities before them. That's worth living another day just to see what they do with it. But Rudolph didn't have any possibilities. From the moment of his birth, there was no open country stretched out before him, alive with promise. Only closed doors. I mean, you gotta understand, our whole culture is based around natural athleticism. A deer who can't run, or jump, or dance, or pull a sleigh, or just stand there and look sexy in leather and sleigh bells, he's better off dead. If Rudolph were a domestic deer, they'd have shot him, put him out of his misery. The only future he ever had was as a burden to his parents, who were overburdened enough as it was. So when Santa gave Rudolph the chance to lead the team, you bet I jumped at it. You gotta understand what this is like. The British have their queen. Americans have the Beatles. And reindeer have the ape. I remember once back before I joined the team, Victor was making an appearance at a benefit. I asked him for his autograph. He misspelled my name, but for years, that autograph was my most prized possession. Now when he died, I sold it. It was enough to pay 2 months back rent. Whoever has that now has one hell of a collector's item. And not just to fly with the ape, but to lead the team. I mean, that's something that only Dasher had ever done. Dasher, who's like a superhero to most deer. Dasher, who flew headfirst into the World Trade Center, fell out of his harness, plummeted 6 stories, and then jumped right back up and led the team on to the fastest Christmas run on record. Dasher. And Rudolph. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses. When Rudolph started telling me that Santa was hanging around, walking him home from school, giving him presents, I knew what was going on. But when Rudolph stopped talking about Santa and just cried, I knew what had happened. I knew I could have prevented it. But you don't ever really want to believe that something like that will happen to your own family until it does. I didn't let Rudolph go out anymore. We knew Santa waited outside the door. He stayed home. And his mother and I prayed that it was over. But when Santa Claus came into my house, when the most powerful man in the world came into my home and asked for my son, what was I supposed to do? I did the one thing that nobody had ever done. And many have done it since then. And most of them will brag about it for the rest of their lives. But before that day, no one. No deer, no elf, nobody had ever said no to Santa Claus. I said no to Santa Claus. He was shocked. My dough fainted. And then he offered me money, gifts, reindeer things. I said no. He said there was a spot for me on the team that my family would never again want for food or shelter, clothing. That I, Donner, an unemployed herd deer from Fairbanks, would be one of the 8 most important reindeer in the world. One of the Dashers, the Victors, the Comets. I said no. Then he told me he could find a place for Rudolph on the team. That Rudolph, who wasn't going to be anything, who couldn't even aspire to be the miserable failure that his father was. That Rudolph, who would have been better off dead than born, was going to do something that most deer cannot even dream of. That for the first time in his life, he'd have prestige and power. That cruelly maimed as he was, he would never again want for love or affection. The people would write songs about him. Being a red-nosed reindeer would be something to be proud of. Yes, I said yes. And I listened to his screams from the next room. And I listened to his tears for the years to come. But he never again cried from hunger or loneliness or humiliation. He only cried from fear and pain. And eventually, after Santa lost interest in him, he didn't even cry from that. Those were good years. And everybody wants to know how Donner can work for Santa Claus after what he's done to my family and to so many others. Well, the others are on their own. But I have made him pay. I made him pay me. I made him pay Rudolph. I make him pay every time somebody else tells him no. You gotta understand. I've paid too. I pay with my son. With my mate who left me. With my honor and my self-respect. And now, when I thought all this was behind us, I'm paying with my son again. My son who sits there and stares and I don't know why. He sits there and stares and sings Christmas carols, obscene Christmas carols. And he doesn't even hear me when I talk. And I don't know why. He won't tell me what's wrong. And I can't ask him. And I don't know why. I don't know why. And then they ask me why. And I don't know why.